Sean Combs has entered the courtroom.
Sean Combs is now seated at the defense table, Kira, with his attorneys. Judge Arun Subramanian has just taken the bench, instructing everyone in the courtroom to maintain decorum when the verdict is reached. It comes after about 14 hours of deliberations over 3 days, and it comes after the jury became stuck on the top charge of racketeering conspiracy, saying they had reached a unanimous verdict on 4 of 5 counts, sex trafficking and transportation for the purposes of prostitution, but had become stuck when it came to the racketeering conspiracy charge. And it's a complicated charge because it required the jury to believe that Combs, if they were to convict, was the leader of a criminal enterprise who relied on his assistants and bodyguards and other employees to commit crimes with him. And there were 8 to choose from. The jury would have to find that Combs agreed to commit at least 2 of those 8 so-called predicate acts. But the judge at the time did not take a partial verdict. He instructed the jury to go back at it. It was too soon to give up. And here now, on the 3rd day of deliberations, after about 14 hours, Kira, the jury has reached a verdict.
And Aaron, I understand that, as I'm being told now, the jury is entering the courtroom. Give us a little bit of color from early this morning. Apparently, Sean Combs was allowed a moment with his family. They prayed together. Tell us about that, Aaron.
This was not the first time that Sean Combs has prayed in the courtroom. The judge was not on the bench. He asked the marshals for permission to speak with his family. There's an entire row in the gallery, the 2nd row of the gallery, reserved for Combs' family members, his mother, twin daughters and sons, all there, other family members in the courtroom as well. And he asked them to hold hands, bow their heads, and pray. And that's when Sean Combs asked for blessings for his family and also for the jury. That jury is now entering the courtroom, Kira.
And I'm told the jury is seated now. Brian Buckmeyer, our legal contributor, I want to bring you in on this. I'm going to have you comment on that in just a second. But let's talk about the RICO charge, the toughest charge here, but would bring the strongest penalty, right?
In a sense, yes. So with the racketeering conspiracy, it does have a possibility of a life sentence. The reason why I say in a sense is because the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, that sentencing guideline, it has a minimum of 15 years to life. So life is a possibility whether or not RICO is met. But I think with the RICO, there's an added issue as well as to automatic forfeiture, because when you are convicted of a RICO conspiracy, the government isn't just looking to incarcerate an individual who participates, or in this case is allegedly the head of that racketeering conspiracy, but also to dismantle that conspiracy or that RICO from a financial standpoint. So all the stuff we heard about Sean Combs' homes and his enterprise and the bank accounts that were used for the sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, if convicted of racketeering conspiracy, that can also be dismantled or taken by the federal government.
And Brian, talk about some of the charges that were dropped. Is it being read right now? Okay, let's go right into the courtroom. Okay, all right. It is being read right now, I am told. Aaron, let's take it back to you as we are now hearing from the judge inside the courtroom.
So the jury, Kira, had to fill out this form, which lists the charges, proven, not proven, the predicate crimes, and whether Sean Combs is not guilty or guilty. On count 1, the racketeering conspiracy charge, Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, perhaps the most complicated charge for the jury to understand. The count 1 had provided for a number of predicate acts, but the jury does not have to get into that because they have found Sean Combs not guilty of leading a criminal enterprise, not guilty of racketeering conspiracy. They will now move to the other 4 counts, 2 of them on sex trafficking and on and we have not guilty now on count 2, which was sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of sex trafficking when it comes to his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. There was a real debate that the jury heard over the course of the last 2 months about consent and coercion and the complications of deciding when an 11-year relationship between Combs and Cassie Ventura may have become a criminal one, and the jury decided it was not, criminal sex trafficking when Sean Combs committed what his attorneys freely admitted was domestic abuse, as you saw in that video. He has been found not guilty now on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. He has been found guilty on count 3, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. He has also been found guilty on count 5, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. These charges carry a maximum penalty of up to 10 years in prison, so we do have a split verdict. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, not guilty of sex trafficking Cassandra Ventura, but he has been found guilty on 2 counts of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And we're waiting for one more count, the sex trafficking of Jane. And just now the jury has decided that Sean Combs is not guilty of sex trafficking his former girlfriend who testified under the pseudonym Jane. So the jury has now believed that the relationships that Sean Combs had with his former girlfriends Cassie Ventura and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane were not criminal, did not involve sex trafficking. All Sean Combs has been convicted of here is transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And Kira, those did seem to be the most evident crimes that Sean Combs committed. We heard testimony from the male escorts. The jury heard about the cash that they were paid, and as prosecutors told them, they were not in those hotel rooms for scintillating conversation. Sean Combs guilty of transportation for the purposes of prostitution, not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, not guilty of sex trafficking. Kira?
All right, let's put this in perspective now that we know where Sean Combs has been found guilty and non-guilty. Let's put into perspective, Brian, on time he will serve. What are we looking at now with regard to years? Of course, we should point out there will be an appeal. He's got plenty of money to do that, but let's take it from where it stands right now.
Kira, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. I'm not even sure if I would say there would be an appeal, because for Sean Combs and his defense team, this is a massive win. 3 of the counts that had a life sentence possibility are gone. When it comes to transportation to engage in prostitution, the minimum is nothing. There's a theoretical possibility that he walks out on probation. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, but the max is 10 years. Even if you were to take both sentences, and he's not going to get 10 years, they're going to look at his criminal history, mitigating circumstances, aggravating circumstances, and I would assume that he gets somewhere in the middle ground, maybe like 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years, possible through that sentencing range for each count. Sean Combs going to trial where he was facing life and being able to walk out with something under 10 years, well under 10 years possibly, that is a victory. Will he appeal? Sure, that's his right to do so, but I don't see an appeal here. I think you take this as a win, you serve the few years that you may get, and you be happy that you didn't get life. I'm somewhat shocked as to the trafficking for Cassie. I thought that might have been a stronger case for the government. I didn't think that they had the RICO, and I definitely didn't think they had the Jane trafficking, but this is, I think it only needs so many words, and I keep saying it, I think this is a positive result for Sean Combs and his team.
I'm being told now Combs is hugging his lawyer at this very moment. Clearly, he's seeing it as you are seeing it as well. You know, we should point out, Brian, let's look at bigger picture here. He is a music producer. He created a brand around himself. He was a big part of bringing hip hop into the mainstream. There is an entire entertainment business side to this. How do you see, from your experience, this win, as you are saying, for Sean Combs? How will it impact his business empire?
I think, for lack of a better term, there is always going to be a blemish on Sean Combs' career. I think people are going to look at this in 2 different ways. In one way, they're going to say that Sean Combs probably had a history of getting into trouble with the law and somehow getting out from underneath it. They're going to look at past events through both civil and criminal complaints and say, you know what, he's always had good lawyers or whatever it may be, and he's gotten away with bad charges, especially looking at that Intercontinental video. But I think the other view of this is going to be is that he was tried by a jury of his peers. All of the information, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between was shown to these 12 people, and they did not see the criminal enterprise. They did not see the force, fraud, and coercion. And I think the trafficking to engage in prostitution, I think that's going to be a lighter blemish on his career in terms of the totality of what we saw, as to like, okay, so he paid for people to go across state lines to have consensual sex. And I think consensual sex will be a big part of the conversation based on how the verdict came out. And so do I think he takes a big knock in terms of this case? Yes, but we've seen Sean Combs rebrand and come back from a lot of things, and that is a possibility here.
But let's put it into the context, Aaron Katersky, of the Me Too movement. I don't think anybody can forget the video, the surveillance video that we saw over and over again in that hotel hallway of Sean Combs barely naked in a towel, kicking and dragging Cassie Ventura.
It's an unforgettable piece of video, and it was one of the most visceral pieces of evidence that the jury saw during the course of a nearly 2-month trial, Kira. And the defense really admitted what's depicted on it is domestic violence, but they said all along he's not charged with domestic violence. The defense insisted, even though the defense did not put on much of a case, called no witnesses, that what was depicted was not sex trafficking, and the jury seems to have agreed. And Sean Combs is clearly taking this outcome of a split verdict, guilty on only the transportation for the purposes of prostitution charges, as a win. The jury has been excused. As the 8 men and 4 women stood to leave their seats, Sean Combs made praying hands in their direction and bowed his head slightly as if to say thank you. When the outcome was read aloud in court, Combs put his hands in the air and looked to the ceiling, clearly taking this as a win that he was acquitted on the most serious charges he faced, Kira.
And now I understand, Aaron, his attorneys are calling for him to actually be released today. Could that happen?
Well, it could happen because he has already served about a year's time, a little shy of a year, and there will be a sentencing date. What the defense is likely arguing is that he is now no longer has anything to do with a violent crime. Transportation for the purposes of prostitution carries a maximum sentence of 10 years, a minimum of nothing. So it will be up to the judge to decide. But where he is no longer accused of a violent crime, the defense may have a good case to get him released until he is formally sentenced. If that happens, it's possible he could walk right out the golden doors here. Certainly a number of his supporters and others are waiting. Members of his family were certainly elated. They were not allowed to show any emotion, but they are remaining in the courtroom to see what happens, what the judge ultimately decides, Kira.
Brian, your thoughts on the fact that he could be released today?
So at the beginning of this case, when Sean Combs was charged with sex trafficking, that is a charge that has the assumption that someone should be held pending prosecution. That assumption is gone now because he's been found not guilty of those 2 charges. And to piggyback off what Aaron is saying, the severity of his punishment has greatly decreased. He's no longer looking at life. He's looking at a max of 10 years on each count. Some of that time he's already served while waiting for this case. Mark Agnifilo, the defense attorney who's leading this case, has said that his private plane is in Maui. He has no access to it. So he's hinting at the idea of a number of things that a judge will consider when thinking about bail. Is this person a flight risk? How serious of a sentence are they looking at? And flight risk goes into 2 portions. The actual ability to fly and not come back to the jurisdiction, but also the likelihood of doing that. A person who's facing life, more likely to be a flight risk. A person who's just beaten 3 of the 5 top counts in a trial like this and is only facing 10 years, far less of a flight risk. And so while I think it's somewhat of a Hail Mary for him to be released today, this is the strongest possible outcome that he could have had to make this argument, and I think the defense has a leg to stand on in making this argument, that Sean Combs should be released pending the sentence.
Let me ask you, Brian, because you and I were talking for days about the videos, the just how explicit they were, how Sean Combs treated these women. listening to Cassie Ventura break down on the stand, listening to other women, former girlfriends, talk about the way he treated women. I brought this question to Aaron, but I want to ask you as well, as someone who's an attorney, someone who has been in the courtroom for cases that involve domestic violence, knowing what we know about what happened and how he treated these women.